Thanks a lot for staying with us. Now, World Athletics, which is the global athletics body, has banned male to female transgenders from competing in the female category at international events. This decision means that individuals who have gone through male puberty and have transitioned to female will no longer be eligible to compete in women's events at least. This decision is based on the organization's belief that allowing transgender women to compete in women's events gives them an unfair advantage due to their previous male physiology. But transgender athletes will be allowed to compete in male events or mixed gender events depending on their eligibility. World Athletics chief Sebastian Coe added that this move had become necessary to protect the female category. Earlier, transgender women were allowed to compete in women categories with some conditions, but several sports governing bodies had begun to bar them.
Council has agreed to exclude male to female transgender athletes who have been through male puberty from female world ranking competitions from March the 31st this year. However, in order to do further research into our transgender eligibility guidelines, we will be establishing a working group whose remit will be to consult specifically with transgender athletes to seek views on competing in athletics, to review and maybe commission additional research where there is currently limited research, and to put forward recommendations to Council. The working group will include an independent chair, up to 3 Council members, 2 athletes from the Athletes Commission, a transgender athlete from athletics, 3 representatives of our member federations, and representatives of the World Athletics Health and Science Department.
Now, here are some prominent trans athletes who had captured headlines by winning women's competitions. Leah Catherine Thomas is an American swimmer. She competed on her university's men's swim team from 2017 to 2020, but on the women's swim team from 2021 to 2022. Laurel Hubbard is a New Zealand weightlifter. She was the first openly transgender woman to compete in the Olympic Games in 2020. She had set records in several men's weightlifting events in her home country before transitioning in 2012. Hannah Mounsey is an Australian handball player who previously competed in men's handball before transitioning. She has since competed in the women's category. Now, this is a decision that has been taken after years of deliberations, and many female athletes were also demanding it, even by boycotting events. So here are some of the arguments in favor of this ban. Male puberty provides these athletes significant advantages, which gives males physiological advantages over females. Males develop denser bones, more muscle tissue, for example. Males also have higher strength, speed, height, and lung capacity. Many studies have also shown that transition therapy that some of these transgenders go through doesn't remove the advantages they gain during puberty. And there was a growing fear that females will get diminished in sport if not protected. Some trans athletes have come out condemning the World Athletics decision. Kristen Worley, for example, has said that this is a disheartening and disappointing decision. Nikki Carlin, another transgender athlete, has said that the move will embolden forces of hate against transgender people. But remember, there are several transitioned as well as female athletes who support this. Now, Caitlyn Jenner is arguably the most prominent trans athlete, but she was a male when she won at the Olympics. She had said earlier that if you go through male puberty, you should not be able to take medals away from females, period. Meanwhile, Sharon Davies is a 1980 Olympics medalist, has been a vocal critic of trans participation. She welcomed the decision by saying that trans athletes do not get to pick which category they want to go into. We all get to compete in the category we qualify for. Listen in to some more reactions.
Well, I wasn't thoroughly surprised by it because Sebastian Coe had made some conversation around this to the effect of that he might see athletics going down the same path as world swimming has. So, and of course, it was, around about a year ago, they had put a blanket ban on transgender women who have undergone what they're calling a male puberty from participating in swimming events or all the aquatic sports. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised.
It's not a ban, it just actually moves to protect the female category to female competitors. And it was an excellent decision. But, it's all the national athletic federations that we really need to thank for this, as they pushed back against World Athletics' failed experiment to continue with testosterone reduction for males who identified as females in female sport. So it's really reassuring to hear President Seb Coe come out and say they've got to maintain fairness for female participation above all other considerations. It was just wonderful to finally hear that, because we've been fighting this for quite some time.
Now, rules have also been changed for DSD athletes. Differences of sex development athletes are individuals who have genetic variations that affect the development of their reproductive or sexual anatomy. The new rules concerning DSD athletes require these athletes to reduce their testosterone levels below 2.5 nmol per litre for at least 6 months to compete internationally in a female category in any event now. This was previously allowed till 5 nmol per litre. Previously, DSD athletes were required to lower their testosterone to compete in female events between 400 meters and the mile. Athletes in these categories now will need to keep their testosterone levels below 2.5 new limit for at least 24 months to compete. DSD athletes have also been a bone of contention in female categories. Here are some prominent athletes that fall into this category. Caster Semenya is the South African middle distance runner that many may have heard of. She's been at the center of controversy over her eligibility to compete in women's sports due to her naturally high levels of testosterone. She's won multiple Olympic and World Championship medals in the 800 meters and other events. Francine Niyonsaba is a Burundian middle distance runner. She won a silver medal at the 800 meters at the 2016 Olympics and has won multiple World Championship medals. Duti Chand is the current national champion in India who's provisionally suspended for doping. She's won 2 silver medals at the 2018 Asian Games and has also competed at the Olympics. So the big discussion that's coming up now, transitioned athletes especially being barred from female sports to protect the female category, is this the right call?
It's more upsetting than anything, because what's happening is the most vulnerable are being excluded from sport, and more for political reasons and not based on actual science and research.
Well, it's not a ban, it just actually moves to protect the female category to female competitors. And it was an excellent decision.
Let me also introduce the guest joining us to discuss this vexing issue. G. Rajaraman is sports journalist and writer. Ashwini Nachappa, of course, is a former track and field athlete herself. I thank both of you for your time. Ashwini, I want to come to you first up. Let's discuss the whole thing about transgenders or transitioned athletes, those who were male previously and have transitioned to being females. Do you support this decision? Do you think that it was necessary and a fair call that World Athletics has taken?
Shivani, if you see, sport has evolved and, people in general in our society, things have changed rampantly. And, you can't just go by every decision and say that this is the only right way to do it. But I think given the circumstances and keeping every consideration of every athlete, because quite a number of them, I think even Usha made it public in 2021 when she said there should be a separate category for these athletes. It only becomes necessary that there are rules and lines are drawn for every category, so everybody is aware, and it's the choice the athlete makes.
Okay. On the issue of inclusivity, for example, the World Athletics body and other federations have kind of maintained a fair balance, would you say, because they've not barred these athletes completely. What they're saying is that what became necessary was to protect the female category.
Protecting every category. Why just the female category? And I think it is, a fair decision. As I said, as part of inclusivity in sport of every category, there can be a separate category that the World Athletics or the world sport looks at, and everybody is inclusive, then we compete all together, but in different categories.
Okay.
I don't think they should be shunned away. And in a way, they have said, these are the things that you can do. If you made that choice, you have an option to continue the sport. They're not asking you to, completely cut you off from sport.
Okay. Rajaraman, where do you stand? Do you think that this was a decision that had just increasingly become necessary to take, given the kind of reactions we were getting, especially from very noted former athletes themselves, of what was happening in the female category?
I think, Shivani, have been vocal for some time now. I've been writing about it. The women athletes, I mean, there has been talk about human rights of the athletes who are affected here, whether it's the trans athlete or whether it is the DSD athlete. They're talking about the human rights of such athletes. What about the human rights of the females who are contesting against them? Take, for instance, the 7 finalists in the World Championship or in the Olympic Games where Caster Semenya was involved. What about the human rights of the 7 of them who are running for second place? You're denying them a fair crack at the gold medal. I think it is only right that there are 2 divisions. One is an open category where anyone can take part, and the other is a female category where only the females can take part. I think it's a decision that has been long pending, and I think World Athletics has done well to bring in the DSD regulations. There was restriction only at the international level. Now they've got it down to the national level as well. Every event where world ranking points are available, I think these athletes are now barred from competing in the female category.
What do you think is the long-term future, Rajaraman, if I talk about across sports? For example, FINA had also taken a similar decision last year. Leah Thomas is one of those prominent examples that had divided the public opinion. And now World Athletics is taking it. More and more federations seem to be moving in that direction, that you cannot allow transition athletes to compete in the female category. Do you believe that's the future? That will be the consensus?
Even before the International Olympic Committee empowered all the federations to make decisions around DSD athletes and around transgender athletes, World Rugby set the lead, Shivani. They barred trans athletes from competing with the females, primarily because it's a contact sport. You imagine a trans athlete colliding with a female athlete. I'm not being sexist here, but I think you have to be practical. And if there is a division between sexes rather than gender, sometimes people identify themselves as female despite being male perhaps, but it doesn't mean that you should be not allowing the females to contest with themselves. So this is the future. I think this is where we are headed. All sports will start making decisions like this, except of course where for a sport like equestrianism, for example, where you compete together and it's okay no matter what sex you are in.
Fair enough. Let me come to the issue of DSD that you mentioned as well. Ashwini, I want to come to you as well. The regulations for DSD athletes, as I pointed out earlier, have been made more stringent. Do you believe that too is the right call to take?
DSD has been a topic for the last couple of years, especially after Caster Semenya's issue. It has been a debate in all forums and including in India. I personally feel that every competition must be played on a level playing field, and this definitely gives the athlete an advantage. So I'm, while we all speak about inclusivity, sport must be inclusive, but in this case, I think the level playing field is more important, and inclusivity can be in the form of having a separate category in itself for competing athletes at every level.
Yeah, and on this issue, I do have to ask you about Duti Chand as well, because she is one of the athletes in India that falls into this category. What would you say to somebody like her, or athletes like her, now that the parameters have become tougher?
Yes, I think from 5 they brought it down to 2.5.
Yeah.
Duti has been, fighting this battle for a very, very long time. And I personally feel that a time comes in every athlete's life to decide what is best and the roadmap ahead for them. I think with this new rule, or which has become more stringent, it's important that every athlete now kind of builds their capacity to do different things or into that category. Sport is not limited just by for athletes playing on the field or inside the arena. Sport has a lot to offer. And I think her story is a great way to motivate thousands and thousands of kids. You can do so many things in sport. It all depends on the mindset. And I always have said, and I've told you, I've always wanted to walk out with grace.
Yeah.
She has fought a long battle. She has performed brilliantly for Indian athletics. Let's give her that credit till such time. And now that the rules have changed, it's the choice she makes into, how she moves forward. And I could only wish her all the very best. And many athletes that will come in that category will now realize that this is what they need to do.
Rajaraman, where do you stand? How does this affect Indian athletics?
You might see a few go out of Indian track and field sport. You might see a few big names missing out, which will be unfortunate for them. But I think it's only fair that the women get a fair chance to compete among themselves, because for years there have been only two categories, male and female. Now it can transition to open and female. So you might want only the females to compete against females, because it is a natural process. I think the universe it would have been so simpler, Shivani, if there were only males and females. Unfortunately, in this world, there is a small portion that falls in the DSD category. Too bad. But World Athletics has studied them for 10 years. Duti was the first one to go to CAS against the hyperandrogenism regulations. Then World Athletics was forced to bring in the DSD regulations, against which Castor went to court, but she lost a battle there. So I think IAAF or World Athletics, as it's called now, is on the right track. They have had scientific backing of whatever decision they've made. I don't think it's going to be challenged at all.
Okay. Well, SEPCO has said that they will form a committee. So he was categorical in saying that we are not saying no forever. And you're quite right. This is an issue that, besides sport too, has become an issue that is dividing people like few issues we've seen in the past. So it's become more a cultural and political issue as well, especially in countries like the US of A. But finally, Ashwini, I do want you to talk about it, because you're a female athlete yourself. You interact with them till today. For those who may not understand this issue and may find that this is unfair, from your point of view, talk about the disadvantages to a female athlete when competing against such athletes.
You said it. That's exactly the reason. They definitely have an advantage, and that's not the fair playing field. So even if I'm competing against an athlete very well knowing that, this is the case, it's mentally not going to be all right for me. And I would not be, I'll say anyway, she's going to do better or he's going to do better. It's very difficult for athlete who doesn't have this issue to take it very lightly, because it demoralizes that athlete too. While we feel sad for athletes like this, it's you have to consider the athletes who are competing at with all kinds of issues against athletes who have no issues in such, but they also have that added advantage. So no matter what you do, they're going to have that advantage irrespective.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. I do thank both of our guests for joining us. It seems like this is the direction that at least female category will go in future, but the last possibly has not been heard on this. On that note,